ஹலோ ஆஸ்பிரன்ஸ். ஒவ்வொரு நாளும் ஒவ்வொரு டாப்பருடைய ஒரு இன்டர்வியூ ட்ரைனிங் ப்ரோக்ராம் செஷனை வந்து நம்மளுடைய யூடியூப் வீடியோவில் பார்க்குறோம். அந்த விதத்தில் இன்றைக்கி குடிமைப்பணி தேர்வில் அகில இந்திய அளவில் 35th ரேங்க் வாங்கின அபர்ணா ரமேஷ் அவங்களுக்கு கிங்மேக்கர்ஸ் ஐஏஎஸ் அகாடமியில் இன்டர்வியூ ட்ரைனிங் ப்ரோக்ராம் எப்படி கொடுத்தோம், எப்படிப்பட்ட ஒரு இன்புட்ஸ் வந்து அவங்களுக்கு வந்து யூபிஎஸ்சி சிவில் சர்வீஸ் எக்ஸாமினேஷனில் ஹெல்ப் பண்ணிச்சு அப்படின்றத இந்த வீடியோஸில் நம்ம பார்க்கலாம். அபர்ணா ரமேஷை பற்றி ஒரு சின்ன அறிமுகம். அபர்ணா ரமேஷ் வந்து தமிழ்நாட்டில் பிறந்தவங்க. அவங்க அப்பா அம்மா எல்லாருமே தமிழ்நாட்டிலே பிறந்து வளர்ந்தவங்க. அபர்ணா ரமேஷ் வந்து சிவில் சர்வீஸ் எக்ஸாமினேஷன் ப்ரிப்பரேஷன் வந்து ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணப்போ ஆந்த்ரோபாலஜி வந்து ஆப்ஷனில் வந்து எடுத்திருக்காங்க. அபர்ணா ரமேஷ் அவங்களுடைய ஸ்கூலிங் எல்லாம் வந்து சேலத்தில் வந்து படிச்சிருக்காங்க. அபர்ணா ரமேஷ் தான் தமிழ்நாட்டுடைய டாப்பர் அப்படின்றது வந்து ரொம்ப மகிழ்ச்சியாக இருக்குது. தொடர்ந்து கிங்மேக்கர்ஸ் ஐஏஎஸ் அகாடமியில் 4 ஆண்டுகளாக வந்து யூபிஎஸ்சி சிவில் சர்வீஸ் எக்ஸாமினேஷனில் டாப்பரை வந்து ப்ரொடியூஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கோம் அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிறப்ப ரொம்ப மகிழ்ச்சியாக இருக்குது. ஸோ ஐ விஷ் எ கிரேட் சக்ஸஸ் இன் ஹர் கரியர். All the best, Aparna Ramesh. All the best to all who are watching this program. Thank you so much.
Hello, Aparna. How are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good morning. Good. You're speaking to us from Gurugram or some other place?
Yes, sir. Presently, I'm in Gurugram.
Gurugram, right. And you live in St. Thomas Mar, your apartment is. Isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Who is this St. Thomas?
Sir, I know that he's a Christian saint who actually came to India, and he landed in Chennai to spread the message of Christianity. And I think the Sant Thom Church in Chennai is built to house his relics.
Try and find out more. It's a very interesting personality, St. Thomas. Which period he came, what all he did, and what happened to him at the end.
Yes.
And St. Thomas Mount.
Sorry, sir.
In Chennai, you know about St. Thomas Mount?
Sorry, sir. I'm not.
Yeah, there is a small hillock. It is named after him. A very interesting history about St. Thomas. Try and find out. I find that you are highly qualified as far as urban regional planning is concerned. You are a fellow. You have submitted a paper and all. Tell me, what is ailing urban planning in our country? And do you have any quick fix solutions as improving the urban planning?
Yes, sir. Sir, I think there are 3 key issues. The first one would be that there is definitely a shortage of urban planners, qualified urban planners. The second one would be in terms of institutional coordination. Different departments are required to plan a city and implement those plans. And that issue is definitely something that we are lagging behind. And the third thing, sir, the finances. So urban development finance has only recently, I think after the JNNURM, it's been taken up in a big way, especially by the central government. So in the last 10 years, we have made very important strides, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. And quick fix solutions, sir, I'm afraid that there are no real quick fix solutions, but definitely improving the quality of urban planning education so that it adapts to the changing needs. That would be one important step.
Okay. In your interest, you have stated that you follow the yoga, the Sivananda school. How many schools of yoga are there? And what are the major differences between various schools of yoga?
Yes, sir. Sir, several schools of yoga have actually come up over the years. Initially, it started off with the Patanjali school of yoga and Ashtanga style, the form of yoga. But eventually, especially in the modern era, it has picked up in the West as well as in India. And some very well-known schools are the Iyengar school of yoga, the Bihar school of yoga, and some very new styles have also come up in the West, like Power Yoga and Bikram Yoga.
Okay. I'm going to give you a situational incident and try and do a role play on that. You are Deputy Commissioner of Gurugram district. There is a big project to be implemented, and a lot of people have submitted their bids for executing the project. And your divisional commissioner, your boss, is asking you to select X, and you find that X is not coming anywhere near the technical bid or commercial bid. You are in a dilemma. What will be your approach? You understood the situation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So from what I've understood, I see that perhaps it is possible that maybe my senior is asking me to select a candidate, even though he is not fully qualified for the project. And this bias, this impartiality is not is unbecoming of a civil servant. And so I feel that first I would try to clarify, maybe ask my senior why he has or he or she has tried to favor this particular candidate.
He will not tell you. He will not tell you that. You can't ask him also.
So then I would look at the facts.
He's senior. He's senior. He will just give you a command. Say, Aparna, we have some interest in X, select him.
So then I will look at the facts of the case and present to him my report, a written report saying that this particular candidate is not as qualified and does not meet the criteria required. And further, we can act upon that report. I would suggest that.
Okay. Good. Yes, Jawahar, sir.
Okay. Aparna, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
And I think Sir said it's very impressive biodata. And you can expect more questions on urbanization, urban infrastructure, urban poor, urban transportation, urban blues, whatever may be, because they will get the chance to quiz on this. That's my initial suggestion. But, well, you worked with the National Institute of Urban Affairs. What is the role you did there?
Yes, sir. So the National Institute of Urban Affairs, NIUA, and the Smart Cities Mission, Government of India, together they run a fellowship program called the India Smart City Fellowship for young professionals from different fields, and it's a competitive process. So I was one of the fellows selected.
What did you do actually?
And the fellows, they are given a 12-month time period. And this time it was very difficult because of the pandemic restrictions. And we are supposed to come up with a solution to a challenging urban problem. And this solution...
Are you being assigned a specific solution, area for solution?
So we were not assigned one, but we were asked to identify the problem ourselves, develop a solution, and then...
And what is the problem that you have chosen?
Yes, sir. So the problem that we began was the use of data within the government. And smart cities, they are using data, they are collecting data at a very large scale, especially because of the IoT sensors that they have installed across cities. But what are they doing with this data was our initial question. And so we tried to look at data management, developing a data management ecosystem for the city of Faridabad, which was interested in our project, and they decided to invest in our project. So we began a pilot with traffic data collected from their traffic signals, automated traffic signals, and we processed it and we standardized it so that it can be used in...
very well. I understand. Thank you for that. And the Smart City program, both in terms of expenditure or in terms of physical progress, we have not achieved as per the desired result, expectations. What aims our Smart City mission or program?
Sir, I can give three very important points for this. Functions, finances, and functionaries. So in terms of the functions, sir, the SPV, which is in charge of implementing these smart city projects, they don't really have a foothold in the city administration.
No, I don't want any textual explanation. I want you to say just 1, 2, 3, just 3 points.
Yes, sir. So the second thing is that the cities have been quite over-ambitious in their financial projections. And number 3, sir, in terms of the people who are implementing or proposing these solutions, they are often consultants. And these consultants will leave after a period of 3 to 5 years, and the institutional memory does not remain.
Well, are our cities are really smart?
Sir, I would say that they are on the path to become so. It's a long journey.
What do you think the basic requirement for making a city smart? Essential one. Some say about 2-3 important ones.
Yes, sir. Sir, what is essential is to ease the comfort, improve the comfort of people living in cities. So in terms of public transport, ensure that there's multimodal integration, last mile connectivity. In terms of water supply, ensure that there is 24/7 clean drinking water. In terms of sewerage, make sure that flooding does not occur and the sewer lines are cleaned according to time. This could be done through IoT sensors. So in terms of housing, of course, we can use data to check what is the baseline level of housing, affordable housing available in the city. So in terms of energy as well, we can use the latest improvements in solar energy technology.
Yeah. In urban, the urban poor are much worse than rural poor. Do you agree with me, disagree with me, and what is your suggestion?
Sir, I would say that the urban poor face a very different set of challenges compared to the rural poor. The first issue is that they are first uprooted from their original native place, and now they are living in a different location altogether. Apart from the social and cultural variations, differences, and discrimination that they face, they also have to face economic poverty. And then they are not given the political voice and representation that they deserve, sir. And thirdly, the quality of urban infrastructure is not built really to accommodate these the migrants and the poor who flow into cities. And sir, one more thing that I would like to mention is that recently in the budget, we have seen that only the PM NULM, the National Urban Livelihood Mission, has received only 10% of the amount given to the National Rural Livelihood Mission. So in terms of political will also, there's something missing there, sir.
Well, what are the SDGs connected with urbanization?
Yes, sir. Sir, the SDGs specifically connected with cities is SDG 11, making cities and human settlements more inclusive and sustainable. But if we look at the broad perspective, all the 17 goals are in some way or the other linked to urban life, whether it's in terms of no poverty, no hunger.
Not all, many of them are at international level being done, right? Like kind of sea life, land life, they may not have direct connectivity, direct connection with your urbanization. You can find out what are the SDGs that are directly related to urbanization. Well, now there is a recent delimitation process is going on in Jammu and Kashmir. Who is heading this process?
Sir, a special delimitation panel has been appointed in March.
So that's what I'm saying. You need not tell when it started on March. When your answer comes, you can directly say. I asked who is that?
Sir, a retired Supreme Court judge has been appointed as the head of the commission.
Yeah. What is her name?
Sir, I'm sorry, I'm not able to recollect.
Yeah, no problem. Ranjana Prakash Desai. Why there is so much of fuss being created about for this delimitation process?
Yes, sir. Sir, I think the political parties of Kashmir have raised two major issues. The first is that the delimitation process is happening only in Kashmir in 2021, whereas the rest of India, it is planned only for 2026. And the second issue is the census. So we are now going to use 2011 census data, whereas the rest of India will be using 2021 census data for their delimitation process.
Well, what are the features of this basic features of delimitation process? Why should we do delimitation at all?
Yes, sir. Sir, Indian demographics has changed quite a lot over the years, and keeping this in mind, the Constituent Assembly decided that every 10 years we will set up a delimitation commission to redraw the boundaries of the Lok Sabha and Assembly constituencies in the state, and also change the amount of reserved seats that need to be allocated. And so, and this will use the latest census data to ascertain the numbers.
Why are the political parties are making hue and cry?
Sir, regarding which issue, sir?
Delimitation in Kashmir.
Sir, I think they are also concerned about the division of seats between the different areas, whether how much will be divided between Kashmir, Jammu, and then the other parts of the erstwhile Jammu Kashmir.
Yeah, they have their own vested interest or political interest in certain areas, right? It goes to how it has been realigned, like the communal pattern, the kind of their party pattern and all that. Okay. Finally, last question. Urbanization will affect agriculture. Do you agree or not agree?
Yes, sir. I think so. Because first, of course, in terms of the land, there is a expansiveness of urbanization that we see, the suburbanization. This is swallowing up slowly very fertile agricultural land that was once outside the city. The second is in terms of the labor, sir. A lot of the rural agricultural labor is now seen to be migrating to the cities in search of better employment, especially the younger generations. So, and thirdly, in terms of capital, also we see that there is more investment flowing into the cities, whereas the rural agriculture is losing out on a lot of opportunities there, sir.
Very well, I agree with your answer. And how your architecture can come in to reduce this divide between this urbanization and also reduction in rural areas or for farming activities. You are an architect.
Sir, two ways that I can think of right away. The first one, as an architect, I can help improve the quality of infrastructure in rural areas. And the second one is to use rural, locally available materials and skills and use them productively so that it can benefit not just the rural areas, but also urban people.
But you are not mentioning about vertical growth of buildings.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm
more high-rise buildings, vertical growth.
Yes, sir. More compact cities, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that way, your land requirement may come down. But smart cities will provide, even if it is a 50-story building, it can provide, isn't it? So that's a kind of a challenge. Always the challenge comes in, we'll have to handle it. Okay, thanks, sir. Take it, sir.
Yes.
Aparna, are you able to hear?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay. Aparna, your father is from Tiruchirappalli. You studied at Salem, so you must be very well familiar about Tamil Nadu. And you studied architecture. Can you tell something about this Dravidian architecture?
Yes, sir. Sir, from my short but very valuable experience of living in Tamil Nadu, from the temples I have seen and studied, Dravidian architecture can trace its roots to the Sangam era, and it has evolved over from the structural temples of the Pallava period to the more sculptural and stone-cut temples of Pallava period to the structural temples of Chola and Pandya eras. And sir, some of the most important features that make it unique is the presence of the Gopuram, the presence of the compound walls, the tank, temple tank, which is a very important feature, the multi-columned, multi-pillared halls that are seen within the temples, and of course its sculptural skill that is displayed in the inside the temple walls.
What is your understanding of the science and technology or the knowledge of architecture which was present during that time? Do you think it was of the fairly high level, or what's you must have studied, is it not? Can you tell something about this Tanjore temple from architectural point of view?
Yes, sir. The Brihadishwara temple, sir. Sir, first of all, it is simply a architectural and structural marvel of its time because of the height which they were able to achieve with structural stability, and also they were able to have such precise geometry so that
how did they achieve the structural stability?
Sir, I'm sorry, I'm not complete.
Okay, all right. Okay, please go ahead.
So the second thing that is really unique is the precision which they have built the temple, sir. Because the flow of sunlight within that temple and within the Garbhagriha is so precise that particular days of the year, the sunlight flows exactly inside. And it does not cast a shadow as well as what is well known about the temple.
So now there is in urban infrastructure, we have to invest a lot. That's a challenge. So you have been, but at the same time, the return on investment on urban infrastructure is a long-term investment. How will you balance that according to you? If you are in a position, what kind of business model you would try to work out?
Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the second part of your question. That
return? The urban, we need to develop urban infrastructure. For that, we need investment. Obviously, government cannot invest. We don't have that kind of money. Now we have to go for a people, and any investment on urban infrastructure is a long-term return. It doesn't come quickly. So how do you, what is the type of model you will envisage to develop the urban infrastructure?
Sir, three very important ideas. The first thing is the PPP models. The second one is value capture financing. And the third one is to basically build as low cost and as economically efficient as possible, sir. One example is the Metro Light and Metro Neo public transport that is being proposed.
But Metro is funded by largely government.
Sir?
So now the urban infrastructures, where will we get money?
So one model that has been followed before is municipal bonds. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation has been very successful even in the past, and even recently when they had green bonds that were issued, it was oversubscribed about 5 times. Other cities have also taken up this measure. The second one is through multilateral financial institutions like World Bank, ADB. They are often very interested to invest in urban infrastructure in India. In Karnataka, they have invested largely in the water infrastructure, in Tamil Nadu, in the roads. And thirdly, sir, would of course be the private sector to encourage.
Can we learn anything from other countries, developed countries, in developing infrastructure?
I'm sorry, sir. At this moment, I'm not able to recall.
No idea. Okay, fine, fair enough. Now, if you are given a chance, what 2 important things we will do to develop the you can say living condition of the urban poor? What 2 important things you would try to do? You must have seen the urban poor and the way they live and all. Okay, what is that in your view? 2 things that should be done, doable and should be done.
Sir, I would do 2 things. The first one would be to improve the quality of housing. The second one would be to improve the access to public transport.
No. How will you improve the quality of housing? There is no space because they already occupied the unauthorized occupation.
Yes, sir. Sir, there are several models of slum redevelopment that have been proposed in the past. One particular model that is very interesting is by economist Hernando de Soto. In 1990, he said that the land occupied by squatters is termed as dead capital. And if we are able to give them somehow tenure rights for that land and tenure security, they can use that as collateral and improve their businesses. They can invest in their own homes. The government need not provide welfare in terms of housing, but actually you can empower the people who live there to invest in themselves.
According to you, today the country is facing economic problems because of pandemic and all. Okay. How will you, what is the impact of this pandemic on the household savings?
Household safety, sir?
Savings.
Savings. Yes, sir. Sir, I've read reports that the household savings have actually increased during the pandemics in some middle income households. But at the same time, the expenditure, out-of-pocket expenditure on health has drastically increased. And as a result, they've also seen a number of people pledging their...
I want to know only about savings component.
Sir,
COVID-19 and the savings in India.
Sir, I think it has increased, sir.
increase economic. Is it good or not good?
Sir, it is not a good thing because we are a consumption-based economy, and when there is less demand, maybe it will not lead to further economic growth. But at the same time, if that saving is invested properly in certain government schemes or infrastructure projects, we can see some long-term growth.
Are you in favor of consumption-driven economy,
So,
which the West is following? No,
sorry, sir.
no. The developed Western countries follow the consumption-driven economy. So, do you think that is the right economic model India should follow?
Sir, in the West, they began with a manufacturing-based economy first. They were the
If you,
makers. And
if you consume more, you are putting more pressure on resources, including environment. So, do you agree with that? Our model of development should be consumption-driven economy, or some other model?
Sir, I would say that a sustainable model which has a base in manufacturing would be the ideal model for India.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I think.
Madhvi?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aparna. Aparna, tell me about your knowledge of archaeology and combining that knowledge with anthropology. Can you tell me how the culture influenced the architecture?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, one example is of the Indus Valley civilization. We see that there was a largely equal and equitable kind of population there. So we see a well-planned city with almost equally sized homes. But at the same time, we see one distinct division in terms of the upper citadel and the lower citadel. So it shows that there was one class of the population that was higher up, whereas the rest of the masses were more equitably placed in terms of their income.
Okay, Aparna, tell me, see, there are government investing on money on architecture, marvelous buildings. But there are poor who are also suffering, who needs money. What do you think the government should do? Say, for example, building statues is one example that you have to highlight. How to take that money and give the poor who in dire need of it?
Ma'am, I think prioritizing poverty alleviation and welfare and long-term empowerment of the people and human development essentially is very important. But at the same time, we need not always look at it as either or. Sometimes it is necessary to have certain national cultural icons. These also emotionally connect to the people. So both can be balanced, ma'am. That is my opinion.
Tell me how smart a city can be useful for a destitute. As you also mentioned in your activities, that you also have done the universal accessibility infrastructures. But tell me how you can accommodate the destitutes who are in the roads. How smarter a city can be useful for them.
Ma'am, always the goal of a smart city is to be better for everyone. So in terms of some concrete ideas that we can have, the first one, of course, would be to use data and data of the destitute in cities, and then plan according to that. This could be in terms of the gender differentiation, the age differentiation, etc., and the disabilities that they may have. The second thing, ma'am, would be in terms of empowering them through education and giving them access to credit, perhaps to start on businesses, small businesses. And the third thing, ma'am, would be through using building technology to provide them safe housing, at least even if it's for a temporary purpose.
Tell me about this, any anthropologists that you're interested in and who have taken you something, a different view on social issues.
Ma'am, it's social issues in general, or is there something particular?
Something specific. Say, for example, you would have studied many anthropologists, right? They would have told us some different perspective of social issues, on social issues. Any reading on that you've made recently?
Ma'am, I have read about M.N. Srinivas and his theory of Sanskritization.
Your views on that?
Ma'am, his opinion was that India's caste system is such that there are certain castes which are considered higher up on the system and certain castes which are lower up. And post-independence, what he was seeing or observing was that the castes placed on the lower end of the spectrum, they wanted to achieve the social status and empowerment that the higher castes had. And so they started aping the practices and rituals of the upper caste. And this had both positive as well as negative effects. One example is of the Gond tribe in Maharashtra. They were often considered to be at the lower end of the caste spectrum. But recently they have adopted the practice of dowry. And this has negatively impacted the society. But at the same time, ma'am, we have one group in one tribe in the Barabam district of Bengal. They adopted agriculture as a means of livelihood. And slowly they were able to empower themselves and gain political representation because through agriculture, through the practice of agriculture, they were no longer considered as lower caste, but slowly became a part of the agricultural community, which had a higher social standing.
Last question on caste. Do you think caste will exist in future? And what is that year that you want to say when caste will be shed?
I would like to believe that as a society, we would be able to overcome the negative impacts of caste. And perhaps by 2050, we will be able to get over this issue.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Aparna, your interview part is over. Now we will give you the feedback on your performance. Before I give the feedback, I want to touch upon two things. One is this design of child-friendly schools mentioned in your DAF. Is there anything on the ground?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Where?
Sir, I was working with an NGO in Bangalore. They basically work with childcare institutions, schools, orphanages, shelter homes. And I was responsible for the measurement and mapping of 6 such institutions, and also implemented in 2 institutions. One was an orphanage and one was a school.
Okay, good. And the other one is your thesis on urban governance for water supply. In what way it is different from what is existing today?
Yes, sir. Sir, the thesis was an exploratory project. The complete title was Governance of Small and Medium Towns in Karnataka and a study of domestic water supply. So Karnataka has this very unique situation where a number of multilateral financial agencies have invested in their water supply. And this has impacted the decision-making in small and medium-sized towns. I studied how over the years these projects have influenced decisions taken and financial decisions, particularly in those towns.
Okay, good. Because there are bound to be questions on these 2 areas. People will be interested to know because you have done something unique. You're not just studied urban planning, you have practiced it also, and you have given ideas as far as your thesis is concerned. Good. Now I will come to this thing. You see, all through the interview for the last 35 minutes, you maintained a very pleasant, cheerful disposition. Continue that. That will keep you in good stead, which is very good. In fact, we feel happy when we see a cheerful face. You maintained your pleasant disposition. Good. And your language flow and the delivery are good. You see, I must not just point out only the negative. I must tell you the positive, because it will enhance your personality when we tell you that, yes, you have this, and wherever possible, you can improve that trait also. Then, when Sir was asking the question about delimitation commission, who is heading that, I think you should just answer the question directly. Don't go into the history. If they want history, they will put a supplementary question. You don't take away the time meant for other critical questions on which you may score better. See, that's why don't go into the history. We don't want the main exam to be performed during the interview. It is a personality. You are presenting certain things the way it should be presented. That means it should appeal to the interview board, and they know that this person has understood the issue, the problem in a 360-degree angle all along. I mean, how you grasp it, how you analyze it, how you are presenting it, that's very important. So don't go into the history of anything, and date and all is not relevant. You just answer the question. If they want more information, they'll put a supplementary question. Then smart cities, yes, you explained well. Bound to be questions on that, smart cities, because you are daft. Smells of smart cities everywhere. Urban planning goes with smart cities today. So that's very, very important area. Now, you have used a lot of keywords. I'm very happy on that. I keep telling the various candidates who appear before us that you must use keywords. In fact, you talked about compact cities, political will, migrant flow, political voice. See, these all, they carry a lot of meaning, a lot of power in your expression. We wanted to use more of keywords instead of longish sentences, which is good. I think you're doing well. When is your interview?
So it's on August 4th, afternoon session.
Okay. 4th means you have just about 20, 25 days, and brush up everything, and planning, smart cities, very, very important area. They are going to ask you more questions on that. And the current affairs again. COVID is very important. What all is happening, the current status of COVID, and the scientific developments which are taking place about treatment, prevention, all those things, and cyber security, another important area. So all these things you concentrate on that, and you will do well. Okay, right? Jawahar sir, you have so you're muted. You're muted. You have to unmute.
I'm sorry, sir. Yeah, now I am muted. Unmuted. I fully endorse with what our chairman has said. He has almost gave a very comprehensive feedback. So what is there is nothing to left with. But basically, I am also impressed with your pleasant bearing. Your answers are very good, but tend to be, you tend to write an essay. But kindly do not do that. Please go to the point. And he said, my question may be long, your answer may be short. Enough. Because I wanted to know whether you know about the particular, because she happened to be a lady judge. See, that's the idea why. Then what is the delimitation? If you know, then you have to say. If you don't know, you can very well say, sorry, sir, it doesn't come to me, right? That will be, you can do it. And what I would like to impress upon you is that there is a quite lot of urbanization centric data, which rarely they come across. So there may be a panel member who has got a lot of experience in urbanization. Maybe somebody from DDA or from Development Authority, like that, or those who worked in the Ministry of Urban very closely. So they may ask you some questions. And this type of ordinary reply may not satisfy. So try to be, say 1, 2, 3 points. That's all. As sir said, wait for the supplementary question. It is not a question of filling the entire time by what you talk. It is a filling as many questions as you take from them. How you impress upon them. There is a one question where Sekhar sir raised about the urban construction financing. Today, our focus is not on bonds, they are all secondary. Public spending, but more is we have to attract what is known as a private sector. We need to build in quite a lot of private money. So it may be what you call direct investment from abroad, portfolio investment, or it may be any other investment. So we cannot simply depend upon when you are raising a bond. You are taking away the same what is available elsewhere in the same country. But when you bring in from outside, so there is a difference. So first, our idea will be to try to mop in some revenue, some kind of finances from outside, right? Foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment. Then you can think in terms of locally, whenever you want, you can raise your municipality bonds. And we didn't touch upon what is called the women empowerment. In urbanization, the women empowerment, how it improves women empowerment? Because it reduces their cooking time. It helps them to go through, various processes, digitization easily, isn't it? They have lot of time to engage themselves in entrepreneurial activities. So you can prepare with your DAP. I think you are competent, but still what I think is you take about some 200, 300 questions from your DAP, prepare them crisp answers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all. Some points. If they want more, then they say you are not very adequate. You go about and give them details.
Yes.
There is no point in saying that, that delimitation committee was formed on such and such day. That is not at all required. It will appear that you do not know the answer, so you are beating around the bush. That impression you don't give to them. Either you know or you don't know. That's all, right? So that you can go to the next question where you can answer that. Otherwise, you have been very adequate. I feel that you are one of the youngest bright candidates who will be able to make it, and wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Sir.
Thank you. Hello.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Yes.
Hello. Are you able to hear?
Yes, sir. We are able to hear you, sir. Yes.
Okay. See, only one thing I just want to add. Often you use I think so on number of occasions. I think it's avoidable because they are not asking our opinion on issues. They only want an answer for the issues, not our opinion. So we can very well avoid this I think or I think so. This, as far as this urban finance is concerned for building the infrastructure, it's a very, very key issue. And if you learn how Britishers built our Indian railways, we have to learn a lot from them. Because when the investment, return on investment is a long-term investment, and there is the element of uncertainty, there are a number of ways to give certain comfort to the investors so that they are ensured of a minimum return on investment. So you should come out with the innovative solution to attract investment. So if you are able to think over something and keep ready to say these are the options which we can consider. That is what it is more important for that. Otherwise, everything is very fine. And this maintaining this coolness is a very important aspect that you are successfully able to carry over through the interview. And go with confidence because knowing or not knowing is not an issue at all. How we handle the situations or the issues and how honest, because that shows our integrity. That's how honest we are in responding to your questions, which we know and which we don't know also. That's very well done. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.